all of you can name about a handful of these superheroes up on the screen right now. And I'm pretty sure a handful of you actually know a little bit more about them. But with DC's reboot in 2011, there was a lot of things that changed within the contingency of the universe. Today I'd like to inform you on how DC Comics' New 52 reboot revolutionized the comic book industry. I've personally been collecting comic books for about a little over 3 years, and I was kind of concerned when they first announced that they were going to do the reboot because they basically threw everything they had out the window. But in my speech, I'll address how they were able to take all your childhood superheroes and basically start over, plus what happened in the reboot and the results of it. DC had an incredible staff that was able to make this possible. First, the writer and chief creative officer, Jeff Johns, who is most notoriously known for reviving characters such as Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, and Flash Barry Allen after 20 years of being dead. He currently writes Aquaman, who is also known to be a big joke in the comic books and always made fun of in Family Guy and The Simpsons. He is now a fan favorite throughout the industry, and he's also one of the lead characters in the flagship book, Justice League, which is also written by Jeff Johns. The next writer will be Grant Morrison, who is a legend in the comic book industry, and he's created hundreds of characters, including recently Batman's son, Damian Wayne, who was the current Robin up until about a month ago when he made headlines in the New York Post by killing off Damian Wayne and basically breaking the Batman again. And then the last writer I would like to talk about is Scott Snyder, who's a rookie in the group who basically started writing in 2009, but has already won multiple awards for his writing in Batman. And he wrote Batman, and the comic Crave Online states that his run in Batman has been flawless. He created the Court of Owls, and also he created Batman's brother, who he was put up against and almost killed his own brother in Snyder's run. Also, Swamp Thing is written by Scott Snyder, and Scott Snyder writes Swamp Thing, and it's the first book for Swamp Thing in about 10 years. So the reboot is also bringing back a bunch of characters that were never touched in periods of time over the years. The artists are also the ones that help bring the comic books back to life, like Jim Lee. He's the one who redesigned all the uniforms for all the different superheroes, and he's writing the flagship book Justice League, but after issue 12 he stepped down from drawing it, and he's currently designing Trinity War and Superman Unchained with Scott Snyder that should be out in June. Greg Capullo is currently drawing Batman. He designed the Court of Owls that Scott Snyder came up with, and he also designed the Talon, which is the main villain from the Court of Owls. Also, he redesigned the Joker because in the first issue of Detective Comics, the Joker had his face purposely cut off, and he was missing from a year in the DC universe to eventually come back and be one of the reasons Damian Wayne was murdered. Ivan Reyes, in my opinion, is the best artist DC has right now. Doug from Comic Book Resources says he delivers the most beautiful book on the rack when it's released. He currently draws Aquaman and took over for Jim Lee when he stepped down from Justice League, so he currently is drawing Justice League right now. Francis Manapul, he's a lot different from other people because he writes and illustrates his own book completely. He's received several awards for his writing, and received an Inkwell Award for the all-in-one artist because he does his own book and writes at the same time. There are many other artists at DC and writers, but it'd be too long to explain. There's others like Pat Gleason, Bat, Adrian Serif, and Nicole Scott. What the reboot brought to the comic book industry was it basically threw all the contingency out of the window and renumbered everything back to one even Action Comics, which is at 906. And one other thing was, it brought strict scheduling to the books because a lot of the times there was delays and postponements between the books, but Crave Online states that the 3 most delayed books were the Ultimates. Between issues 8 and 9 were 4 months. Between Ultimate Wolverine 2 and 3 was 3 years and a month. And All-Star Batman and Robin still hasn't come out after issue 11 in 2008, when most books come out once a month. So that's like waiting for your movie to come out every 2 years, but it wouldn't come out for like 20 years. Now all the DC books have come out on time, except one book, which was the Batman Incorporated 3, which because of this panel, it was supposed to slate to release after the, well, it slated to release, but then because of the Aurora shootings this past summer, it was delayed. So that was the only book that's ever been delayed of the New 52, and that was because they felt it was necessary to postpone it because it was too soon after the shooting. They also bring one of the Wired says that the industry standards have been raised by DC because they release same-day digital comics, which means you can buy your comic book digitally online or in print on that same day. Usually they wouldn't be released till several months after the release of the book, so it helps boost sales that way too. The results of the reboot brought in a lot of readers into the comic book industry because one of the reasons readers didn't start reading comic books at all was because they didn't have a place to jump in. With the numbers such as high as like 906 and 807 in different books and stuff, DC renumbered all the books number 1, which brought in a lot more readers. And after the first month of the reboot, they increased sales in the industry by 9% and took the unit sales from Marvel Comics. And even a year after the release, sales from the last issue release to the year after jumped. Some books jumped up over 100%, and Justice League, you can see, jumped up over 200% in thousands of sales books. Brian Hibbs of ComicBeat.com said not only did DC raise sales for their books, but also brought in books for the entire industry because people went in and saw the books and bought all the other comics books as well, and raised the industry sales up by 18.5% industry-wide. And this caused a lot of the industries, other companies to reboot their franchises like Marvel and Valiant, but their reboots weren't as successful. DC Comics has been around since 1934, and I think this has been the best event that's happened, considering that I've read almost every event since 1984. And I think that DC Comics not only brought new life to brought new readers and kept them, but also brought new life to a dying industry. Because considering Marvel and DC almost went bankrupt in the mid to late 1990s. And that's my speech.
8:43.
So, Roland, what did you think?
I thought overall it was pretty good. Your credibility was
solid. You said you've been an avid fan for about 3 years. And you began by explaining well what you were going to talk about. I did get a little confused just about the artists and whatnot, about what that was all about, but then you went on and explained that well as well. I feel like this is a topic that just has so much info with it that it's hard to explain all of it in an 8-minute speech, but you jammed in as much as you could. You seemed slightly nervous at the beginning, but progressively you did ease into it, and you didn't read off the cards as much as I thought you could have for as much info as you had, using them mostly just as a crutch for the stats. But the visuals were great, and you did a really good job of the citations. And
Okay, let me start with a couple of things that I thought were pretty solid. I thought you did a good job with the supporting material. You did research that indicated what people in that field thought of the reboot. You had statistical information about the impact that it had on sales. You were pretty consistent about citing sources there, so I thought that content-wise you did good research. I do think that there are a couple of problems with the organization and the selection of what you've included, and this is a place where audience analysis would be helpful. Too much. There's just way too much stuff that you're trying to put into this at this time. I think if you focused entirely on the reboot, didn't try to give us too much background on the other areas, that it would have been a little more focused, and I think that's really what your goal is here. So there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be cut out. The whole first half of the speech lists the editors and the writers and starts showing credits and all that stuff, and none of it is explained how any of that connected to the success of the reboot. I'm not saying that they weren't connected to it, because obviously they're the writers and the editors of that. But what is it that they did that changed those kinds of things? And why are we hearing about the writers instead of the changes that they made? See, that to me is the thing that would matter on the reboot. And you kind of immerse us in this as if we would have some familiarity with characters. I'm hearing about Batman's brother and his son, and I'm going, I don't remember Batman ever, barely having a girlfriend, much less a son. And I thought Bruce Wayne was a lone orphan, and where's his brother come from? And all of a sudden, I'm thinking about stuff that has got nothing to do with the reboot that you're talking about, but other storylines that are all part of, this intricate universe that you're never going to have time to talk about, because you've got, what did you say, like 56 different characters that you're talking about in that first section? Yeah, I mean, I forget exactly what it was, when you're talking about the Justice League and all the characters that are in the DC universe there, and they rebooted it, and it's like they're wiping it clear and starting at year one, new issues, all those kinds of things. Okay, why was that important to do? Let's tell us about that. How did they decide to do it? And what was the result of that? That, to me, seems like the way your speech should have been focused. As it was, you're just off on a lot of different tangents, and that's the problem with the speech. The visuals are interesting, but for instance, even when you're talking about the writers, you've got different illustrations that all the writers did. I don't know what's different about each of those illustrations, why that is more dynamic or interesting or any of those kinds of things, and that, like I said, that just takes us away from the focus, which is the reboot, and I think that was the problem with the speech. All right, thank you.